Ah, there you are again. So you want to know exactly how the card types in SYNCANITE Foundation are arranged? Yes, no problem at all. And let's jump right in. The card types in SYNCANITE Foundation can actually be reduced to bribes, operations, and laws. However, these card types also have subcategories. By the way, bribes and operations are both referred to as influence cards. Laws are separate from them. Let's dive into the operations. What exactly is there? Every operation has a color. The color determines which crisis this operation contributes to. That is, by how much the crisis is increased. In the top left, there is a value that tells you precisely. This means, for example, this red card here increases the war die by 1. Additionally, there is always a Roman numeral on the cards from 1 to 4. The Roman numeral tells you when this card is relevant. It's not an obligation, but rather a recommendation at this point. So you don't necessarily have to play a card that is, for example, meant for phase 1, like the sink and bombardment. You can also just detonate the bomb in the middle. It might have less effect then, but it might just increase the exact crisis you need. In addition, there is always an operator called anytime. If you are dealing with an anytime card, it also has a corresponding speed. That means normal cards are handled normally. Anytime cards are always handled before the other cards. This means you can chain here. That means with an anytime card, you can also counter an anytime card. But an anytime card must be countered with at least another anytime card, not with a normal card. In the operations stack, you can also carry out assassinations. How do assassinations work? We explained once in phase 3 of the video, which we link above. In short, you can kill dignitaries from other players with assassinations, and in addition, you can take victory conditions out of their hands. When we are briefly on the player's hand, each player may hold a maximum of 10 cards in their hand, with the 5 victory conditions not counting towards this hand limit. This means you may only buy as many cards as it takes to have 10 cards in your hand. You may not overbuy and then discard or play. These are the operations, the mean cards with which you can cause a lot of trouble, and that are also a lot of fun. On the other hand, there are the bribes. Bribes are divided into 3 types of cards. First, there are voting cards, consent, or rejection, which have values ranging from 1 to 3. Then there are intrigues. Intrigue cards can be activated, either openly, or they can be played face down in phase 3, so that it's not known who they came from. And these cards allow you to harm other players. For example, you can denounce them, which means they have to discard victory cards. Or you can call a tribunal to convict a player. In addition, there is a third card type, namely privileges. A privilege in Golden can be played by a player at any time and then remains permanently. Privileges are permanent advantages that will continue to support you all the time. However, you may have a maximum of 2 privileges active at the same time. Now we come to the laws. There are 20 of them. For each crisis, there are 4, so we get a total of 20 with 5 crisis colors. How the laws work exactly, we also covered in the video for phase 3 linked above. Feel free to check it out. Then there are also a bunch of money cards. Everything from the 1 to the 100 is included. You can easily exchange them, as you know from Monopoly, to show who has how much money. And what will become relevant then are the Pariah cards and your victory conditions. You have 5 victory conditions, and each player has the same 5 victory conditions from the start for each of the 5 crises. If you no longer have any victory conditions in your hand because you had to discard them too often, then you may draw a Pariah card to receive a special victory condition, which allows you not only to win the game, but also to create an incredible amount of chaos. Let me tell you, the Pariah cards are overpowered and unfair. Players will deeply regret it if they push you into a corner. That means you can sweetly and bitterly take revenge. One card type is very important to mention, namely the crises. There are a total of 10 cards in the middle, 2 of each crisis. You always have an event, which is immediate when the crisis is triggered, and a mechanic that permanently comes into play. The event is handled exactly when the crisis die hits 10. The crisis die is set aside, the event card is drawn and resolved. These are always the same cards, always in the same order. This means that with increasing experience, you can anticipate and use this to your advantage. In addition, there is the mechanic. You can always find the mechanic in the player aid card. If you stumble about at the respective effect in the player aid card, it gets resolved. These cards expand or change the game and unlock paths to victory. For example, Conquest moves will transform Phase 1 from a bidding competition into a war game and unlocks the military victory. Additionally, we need to briefly talk about dignitaries. A player is allowed to have a maximum of 1 dignitary. So if they acquire a new one, they must discard the previous one. And another small tip, you not only have the option to raise the crisis value with laws and operation cards, but also with the markets if you completely empty a market. You have the ability to add 10 points to the crisis. At least that's the case with the food and syncanite market. The food market then increases the triage crisis directly by 10, because of course, if there's no food left, I have to trigger a famine accordingly. And if there's no syncanite left, then we end up in tyranny. Only with the monopoly is it reversed, if I completely fill the market here. Then we have a surplus of goods and enter hypercapitalism for the economic victory. And because the question often comes up at trade fairs and events. Once again, hear about the role cards. Just because you have a role with the corresponding color doesn't mean you have to win with the corresponding crisis. You certainly have a small advantage in that direction, but you can also just see it this way. If you are a chairman and already have political power, you can either say, I'll gain even more political power now to create an advantage here. But that is also a risk, because then you are only pursuing a single path to victory. However, you could also say, no, since I already have political power, I might invest my syncanite in capital instead of bribery cards, and with the capital, I am then flexible to act. This means you can then focus on other areas where you may have deficiencies to position yourself a bit more balanced.
Du möchtest weitere Infos darüber, wie wir unsere Geschäfte in der Synchanite Foundation führen? Dann beweise jetzt deine Loyalität und drück auf den Abonnieren-Button. Dazu auch noch die Glocke. Schreib einen Kommentar, teile dieses Video.
Thank you for your contribution.